Today we're going to talk about MrBeast's Squid Game. It's just like crazy, dude. 4 days, over 100 million views. So proud of you, Jimmy. MrBeast. If you haven't, go subscribe to MrBeast. He does a lot of good for the community. He's an awesome guy. But the VFX, I was so impressed by it when I watched it. I'm like, man, MrBeast, this VFX stuff looks good. I was like, John, we have to talk about this. We have to talk about this. And then we found some cool making of stuff, and we're going to talk about it here. They did such a good job. Go!
So MrBeast, Squid Game, and some familiar faces. So kind of a fun one. Nick had really been taking a look at this, and clearly a lot of other people as well. 4 days, 12 point something million views.
Crazy.
Obviously a very, very popular video, and just cool to see the progression of that channel. I mean, giving away all kinds of money early on and now doing massive visual effects projects. It's just crazy too. I mean, he spent a lot of money on this, but he also had some sponsors for it, but also it's the turnaround time that must have been massively expensive as well. I mean, you can see a lot. We'll get into visual effects artists because I happen to know a number of them that worked on this, but it was a super quick turnaround time on. I think they said it was 10 days.
10 days.
We'll get into the visual effects.
300 something shots.
Yeah.
What the heck? It's so crazy. Anyways, if you guys haven't watched Squid Games on Netflix, it was a hit. It was so much fun. The MrBeast was like, hey, if this post gets 10 million likes, I'm gonna recreate Squid Games in real life. And of course it did. That's MrBeast. Blew it out. So he built all the sets. It's really cool. If you haven't, paused this video, go watch on his channel. You probably have already, but great job. And now, John, the VFX, I was super impressed because of the scope and scale. It's amazing what the power of Unreal, because like I've been on small little projects where it was a quick turnaround and we had to find render farms. and you would have to you had 10 days for a project, and like, okay, so really we only have 3 days and 7 days for rendering. You know, it's like the way it actually worked. But now with Unreal, game changer. Well,
it's really neat. It's something we've talked about in the past, how Unity has just bought Weta, and they're integrating a lot of visual effects to real-time rendering, and Mandalorian has been using Unreal Engine. And in the channel, Nick and I have been talking to some visual effects people in the Unreal Engine arena, and we're going to be covering some tools in there. And it's just crazy. The crossover, just talking to them, how a lot of them are game industry veterans or visual effects industry veterans, and they're all jumping into this realm, and it's just cool hearing their stories. And that's the goal that we want to do, is we want to kind of bring their stories in here. But talking about MrBeast and this whole Squid Game recreation and the visual effects artists, it's crazy to just see what they're doing with this. And like Nick said, even small traditional pipeline visual effects, you would think of traditional movie effects, just to do something relatively simple would take a very long time, because 3D rendering especially just takes so long. Even compositing, which is not nearly as intense of a process. Like when I was in school, this was a long time ago, we're talking like a Pentium 4 computer, a 10-second shot might take 9, 10, 13, 15 hours if it was some type of complex shot. And then when you get into like 3D renders, I think the first Transformer movies, I just use this as a benchmark because you hear about it. It was, I forgot how many hundreds of hours it would take just to do one shot, but they have it split out over hundreds of computers so they can finish it in a timely fashion. And now it's not like it's always going to be a game, it's faster than you can do it. It still might take a while, but with Unreal Engine and things like that, you're going to spit it out way faster than you would otherwise. And just really, really cool stuff.
But there was no fur. There was no crazy particle stuff. It was like metal beams and stuff like that, which was like if you think about it, like that was perfect to use the video game stuff for. It's kind of like when Toy Story first came out. It wasn't like they had fur on the toys and stuff. It's like, no, they have to design it within what their limits were, right? So they're like, oh, if we do toys, we can get away with, harder shapes and, rigid, more rigid movements with the, animation, all that stuff. But gosh, John, I mean, SoKrispyMedia. That's the name of the YouTube channel, the VFX channel. So proud of you guys. You guys killed it. I mean, 10 days. Woo! That's awesome.
And the cool thing is it didn't feel like limitations at all. It perfectly fit in what they were trying to do. And it's cool, even though I don't know if they said it was 10 days for them doing all of the pre-production. I'd imagine they did pre-production and they did all the actual 300 shots in 10 days, but I'm assuming they spent much longer in all the pre-production because they had to plan out. They recreated all the sets
Yes.
that they were going to build and say, okay, how big do we need this physical set to be in order to fit this many people on there? So I'm assuming the planning for this, if you're going to spend $3.4 million building all this stuff, you're going to plan it out very carefully. But it's cool. All the virtual, all the pre-production planning was done in Unreal as well. So even that was all, virtually planned out. And the cool thing is, it's like, it allowed them to do this in 10 days. If they just tried to wing this, oh my gosh, we need to get this done in 10 days. We haven't planned anything. Go. Like it never would have happened. So it's really cool that them planning this allowed them to get this done in the confines that they had.
Well, technically they could have got it to work if they had a render farm, and like it still could have been possible, but it would have been on a bigger scale and scope. But like Unreal, yeah.
The big thing with Unreal, as much as anything else, is the iteration. So if you had a render farm, you could get it done, but you couldn't, let's make a slight change to this. Let's render it out again. Yeah. There's only so fast even a big render farm can spit things out. Like Pixar is one of the biggest render farms in the world when it comes to spitting out imagery, and they have it running, 365 days a year. And it just is massive. And it's just one of those things. They still, I'm sure, wish it was faster. They still upgrade it every, now and again and things like that. And they're always
Pixar's going to buy Unreal. No, I'm just kidding. No, I'm just kidding. No, I'm just kidding.
Don't say that. Don't say that. No. But it's just amazing that, they turn down the quality settings a little bit if they need to, and they can spit out, a good quality render in a fraction of the time. And based on what they were doing, maybe they didn't even have to turn down things just for interactive stuff. It might have come out there super, super fast. And it's cool. So just to talk a little bit about some of the visual effects artists I saw there. So some of these guys I know from the past. And the main narrator of the piece, I looked at him, I hadn't seen him in a while. I was like, he looks so familiar, so familiar. And then he pulls up next to me, this is my roommate from college, Taos. I'm like, oh, Taos, I know him quite a while. And so it was funny because I remember him working at Unreal all the time. And, they were pushing it, doing stuff before Unreal was really had these virtual production things in there. And so it's just cool that you've seen their evolution into this, what you consider a new industry. And they were already doing this before they even really got in there. So it's really cool to see them continuing this and still working together, which is awesome to see too. So it's really cool to see that.
No, it was so awesome. And it looked like everyone was having a ball. It looked like a good work environment. I've been in very bad visual effects work environments. Looked like a very happy thing. So it looked good. It looked good.
Either that or they all smiled for the camera.
I know.
Smile. We'll film you on day one when you're all fresh. At the end, you guys are all, it's like,
okay, so go ahead, John.
But for a 10-day turnaround, notice they all were young. They're like, all right, we're not like
young guns
dying, 50 years old. We're like, all right, they have the energy.
All the back pain from sitting too long. John, so let's talk about some cool things they did. I thought it was cool that they just used black and Luma keys instead of having to do a blue screen. And the whole idea too, because then it keeps it more immersed for the players, right? Because you kind of get that level.
So if you guys have never tried to act on a green screen and blue screen, it's very off-putting. It's very weird, especially because you have to light that green screen or blue screen so it's as evenly lit as possible. And when you have all that reflecting onto you, it's very distracting. It's very hard. Whereas black cloth, it at least... It doesn't reflect back on you. You're like, oh my gosh, it's like nuclear bright and things like that. And at least makes it feel like it's around you. It's not this lit, volume. And I'm sure that actually makes it easier for the people just to focus on what they're doing. It makes it feel less like a stage. And the cool thing is one of the first things that the main host said on the visual effects video, he goes, yeah, MrBeast is all about practical. And it still felt like a practical production. They just used the effects to enhance, make it feel like the stakes were higher. And I felt like that worked very well for what they were trying to do, because what they were doing was already built into the sets. It's just, they can't have them plunging, way down, which was hilarious when they were looking at the shots. It was so fun. Yeah.
That was cool. And then obviously the tug of war scene where you have the pull back shot, and they were able to put the crowd underneath, because that's exactly how it was in the show. Like that cool perspective and everything. Knocked it out of the park. I don't know if they had the rights to this stuff from Netflix, but knocked it out of the park.
Well, you know what? I think it's fine to mimic things.
Yeah.
I mean, I think of the scary movie type thing, right?
It's a parody kind of, right?
Would this fall under parody? I'm not sure.
I don't know, but he's giving away money. I wonder if it could be like a charity instead of a parody.
But, it's a neat thing to be able to do. And it's just cool to show that, like, yeah, it cost $3.4 million, but to do this on such a quick turnaround. And I mean, to shoot an indie movie of any sort used to cost a huge amount of money because you have to shoot it on film. Either that or you're shooting on VHS tape when VHS was first new. Like that used to be extremely expensive. Now it's still hard to do. You still have to have a lot of talented people, and it's more accessible than it ever was. It's still very difficult to do, but it's like, wow, you actually can do stuff like this now. Granted, MrBeast has money to throw at this stuff, obviously, but I'm curious how much cheaper this could have been done if they weren't doing it on such a quick turnaround. You know, but yeah, how cool is it?
How cool is it that there's a creator out there that's able to put a production on like this? Yeah, like that's so cool for the platform. It just makes it happy that me and you are making videos here. It's just like, hey, look at this. Obviously, he's like the one truly, going all out and stuff. But it's like, hey, you need someone to pave the way somewhat, sometimes.
Yeah,
and
for
it just
sure.
opens up other doors of opportunity. So
all the time in film and technology and things like that, you see something when it first comes out and you're just like, well, that's never going to be within reach. And slowly you see it become more and more accessible to professionals and then prosumers and then regular consumers. I mean, it happens and it trickles down, and it's going to be neat to see this stuff become more and more accessible. I mean, even Unreal, we're talking about how anybody can go to unrealengine.com and download Unreal. That started off, you had to talk to them, you had to have a contract, it was NDA stuff, and you had to license the engine. Then it was, you had to pay a certain amount monthly. And then because of, good industry competition, Unity Unreal, which is still going on, they're trying to, push each other. And now you're having this competition continuing into the virtual production realm. It's just really neat to see that. But it's cool to see that we just had, not even a week ago or a week and a half ago, the whole Weta thing with Unity. And now we're seeing the whole MrBeast, Squid Game with Unreal and things like that. It's a really neat time to see this happening because again, just in the time that Nick was in school, and then you go back a little bit further when I was in school, this stuff was not even a fantasy type thing where you could make a movie in a game engine.
We had to render farm it like crazy. I just remember we had rooms of computers, and you would go in after hours and have to install the program on every computer, and then you have to hit it and you can batch render. It was just like the craziest and like
But then what a luxury that was compared to going a number of years back before that to where, before they didn't even have school for this stuff before that. So
okay, John, back in my day.
No, that's before my day. I had school for this. Don't try and sell me way back.
We had the render farm in a snowstorm. Carry our computers up the hill.
We didn't have to make Jurassic Park. I just found a dinosaur outside. I really ran from the dinosaur. Anyway, MrBeast was a real dinosaur.
Yeah. Oh, it's so awesome. Well,
but really, really cool stuff. If you guys haven't checked it out, check out MrBeast. If you haven't, I haven't seen Squid Game, right, on Netflix. Yeah. I still have not seen that. Nick was raving about that. There's a lot of, it just goes back to what a cool time to be in entertainment. Just consuming entertainment, creating entertainment, really, really cool stuff.
And just that whole story with Squid Game is so cool too. It took 10 years just for someone to pick up that show, and now it's the biggest show on Netflix. It's like, it just reminds me of like the Beatles. Like no one wanted to sign the Beatles, or like, no one wanted to produce, like certain movies, people say no. It's like people like Harry Potter, right? Everyone said no to Harry Potter. No, we're not going to publish your book. And now it's like almost as big as the Bible. It's just like, gosh,
and then everybody said no to the Lord of the Rings, as well. I mean, sometimes the best ideas are a little bit off the wall, and so people don't want to take a chance on that.
True.
I mean, it just depends on the climate too. The book I just read is Animal Farm, George Orwell. It's a very well-known book, well-regarded, but it was during a period of time of like Cold War type stuff, and they're like, hey, our countries are kind of getting along now. We don't want to publish this. So it depends on a lot of different factors, but it's cool to see like what we're going with now. It's like, boy, a lot of really cool stuff. And like Squid Game, I think you were saying a great thing now is like Netflix publishes a lot of, or creates a lot of, at least for us U.S. audiences, foreign films. So we're getting different types of content. So it's really cool stuff. And that goes back to us. We're really glad to have you guys watching here. We're appreciative that we're in this modern era where we can be on here and creating content and having fun and joking and getting to see, people that we know creating awesome content out there. Taos, if you happen to be watching this, we're super proud of you, but that's awesome, man. You guys that we happen to know. But if you guys like the content we're doing here, please click subscribe. Check out all the stuff we have at asart.space. We have the audio podcast on Audible and Spotify and Apple Podcasts and all that type of stuff. Thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you on the next AsArt.